Hi everyone, I'm Waheeb and I'll be talking about exothermic welding. So exothermic welding, the process of it is a welding process in which molten metal permanently joins conductors together. These conductors could be copper, mild steel, bronze, brass, and among many others. It essentially works by employing a chemical exothermic reaction of a thermite composition. This thermite composition is usually weld powder, to heat the conductors to a point where a low resistance, mechanically sound molecular bond is formed between these conductors once it's cooled. The actual chemical reaction that produces the heat is an aluminothermic reaction between aluminum powder and metal oxide, usually. That's sourced there at the bottom, referenced. This welding process is especially useful when joining dissimilar metals together, and it actually requires no external heat source or current. And we'll talk about the pros and cons later. So if you look at the visual here, you can see the cavity on the left and a detailed picture on the right of what's actually going on here in exothermic welding. So in the crucible, it's where the starting powder and the actual weld metal is to do that thermite reaction. That then goes down through the tap hole into the weld cavity where it joins what you see here on the bottom. So the two cables, as well as the ground rod, are all joined through this process. And the result is once it's cooled and you release it, all those three are joined together. So the real world applications of this is this welding process is usually good for welding copper conductors, but it's also suitable for welding a wide range of metals, including stainless steel, cast iron, common steel, among many others. It's also acceptable in the United States National Electrical Code for grounding conductors and bonding jumpers. So it's actually also encouraged for that as well, those applications. And outside of that, the most notable application for exothermic welding is actually the welding of train track rails. All throughout history, dating to the early 1900s, this method was used for welding train track rails. And currently today, same thing. They still use exothermic welding to create those. So a little more on the pros and cons of it and just the overall thoughts on exothermic welding. So starting with the pros, exothermic welding is the only reliable means of bonding galvanized mild steel to copper conductors. It does not require external heat source or current, so you could get it done with that thermal reaction, and it's good for joining different metals together. Now, the cons of this are it's not good for tight tolerances or thin or small cables, and it's actually fairly dangerous. It requires professional training and certification. It's usually done by field workers outside in an outdoor setting. So you could see why and where this could be useful and not. Thank you for listening, and these are the references that you saw earlier.